Indiana tomorrow night. The Purdue Buckeyes, Purdue Boilermakers will come to town. Chronic, and I was telling Kevin he has not really had the experience of a Simon Scott Assembly Hall that is in the mood, so to speak. And I think that without question, it should be there Thursday night.
Oh, you just messed me up, man. You were talking about tomorrow night for the games. Like, whoa, what time warp did I just jump in? Thursday night. I was like, dang, that was a quick turnaround. No, Thursday night, yeah. Purdue coming in, highly ranked. Indiana winners 3 out of the last 4. It was kind of weird. I was thinking about the game this morning, and this doesn't really feel like a team that's won 3 out of 4, but that's where they are, and it's a huge, huge opportunity for them here over the stretch of the next 5 games. Honestly, you can probably extend that for the next 10, but for all the struggles Indiana's had, particularly on the road, which they were able to right that last night. They can really swing momentum in a massive way with a good game with a win against Purdue tomorrow night. The flip side also holds true for this team. This is one of those where I think they're going to have to show up and compete at a really high level and play a really, really focused game of basketball just because Purdue is so dynamic and they're just so good at what they're doing right now. It could get out of hand and it could really maybe accelerate the narrative of some of Indiana's struggles. But it's going to be a huge opportunity. It's going to be the biggest game probably of the year in Assembly Hall this year. And, on top of that, just from a competitive standpoint, but on top of that, it's against your in-state rival. So I think the atmosphere should be absolutely electric for it, as it always is for Purdue, even in the years where Indiana has not necessarily had the most competitive teams. You're generally going to get the best of Assembly Hall, at least from the tip, whenever the Boilers come to town.
Yeah, Kevin, what would you say is the biggest game you have seen since you've been here covering Indiana on the beat? What, you've been here 3 years now?
Yeah, no, I thought that night game against Purdue, in terms of pure atmosphere, his return was probably, I would have to say that was probably the biggest, just because of the atmosphere of it all. But there were good, because obviously last year was a COVID year, but there were some other good games my first year. I remember the Penn State game, the Ohio State game my first year, the Florida State game, the ACC Big Ten. It was pretty rocking that night. So that first year there were some pretty good atmospheres. But I'm really looking forward to this one because Indiana, as Chronic said, is coming in on a little bit of a high. They've won 3 of 4. There's some confidence. They're undefeated at home. So there's a feeling that if they can play their game the way they played at Assembly Hall, which really has been more on the defensive end. That's where they've really turned up their defensive intensity. That maybe they have a shot, to pull up a huge upset against a top 10 team, which would really bode well for their resume. Because right now you have, one win against a ranked team against Ohio State. That's your signature win. But to get one against Purdue would be really big in terms of how you're looking come March.
Yeah, Chronic. This team is one that I definitely see that can be a tournament team, but they can also be one that misses the tournament. That loss to Syracuse is going to sting them, but nothing like the loss to Wisconsin is going to sting them all year long. But that just means they have to pick up a win somewhere. They have to steal a win somewhere. And I would include beating Purdue at home, stealing a win. Indiana's not favored in this game, so they're not expected to win this game. That would be stealing a win to me.
No, I totally agree. And, this is the type of opportunity, in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture from a selection standpoint, a win against Purdue erases the Wisconsin, maybe the Penn State as well. It would be an upset because they will not be favored. I think it'll probably be 3-4 points. A loss doesn't hurt you that bad so long as it's not a blowout, honestly. But what it does though is it takes one more opportunity off the board where you can make up for some otherwise negatives on the resume. And then on top of that, this is the time of the season when you want to see your team starting to gel, when you want to see your team's identity consistently displayed at home, on the road, what have you. I'm not necessarily saying it's a huge pivot point or the entire season turns on it, rather, but it's one of those opportunities where if Indiana's going to knock off some top 25 teams, let's be honest, it's going to be at Assembly Hall more than likely. And when you know that opportunity is going to be greatest, you've got to seize it. And while Purdue is extraordinarily good this year, one of the better Purdue teams I've probably seen in my lifetime, they're beatable at the same time. And I think we've seen this far with Indiana. Trace is going to do what Trace does pretty consistently. Race is increasingly becoming one of those guys where you can pretty much pencil him in. At the end of the day, Indiana's guards are going to have to step it up. Elite guard play is going to win big games for Indiana. They've got to find ways to minimize the errors, to make smart plays, and by the grace of God, knock down some shots collectively. And it's not that everybody has to be on fire every night, but they've got to figure out who's got the hot hand and feed it. And when the guys recognize it's not them that night, they've got to be smart in their shot selections, because as we've seen time and time again, when Indiana has been able to build a lead, when Indiana's been able to seize momentum, they can very easily just squander it. With just a couple series of plays where the guards just make some boneheaded plays, quite honestly, be it turnovers, poor shots, and this team can swing really, really quick. So it's going to hinge on Indiana's guards, I think.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing that has been pretty inconsistent. But turnovers. Indiana has to hold on to the ball. You can't just provide more possessions to another team, more opportunities to another team, especially in this league, because most teams are either as good or better than you are. So you need every advantage you can get. And Indiana, last night, they got better. I think they had, 14 turnovers, which on a normal day, that wouldn't sound all that great. But when you're coming off of a game that you had, whatever, they had 23 or 4, whatever, for 34 points, that's astonishing, that number. That 34 points, that is the largest points off turnovers I can ever remember. But taking care of the ball is, I don't understand why they're having this much of a problem, because these are guys that are all upper level players, whether it's Xavier Johnson, Rob Finney, even Parker Stewart. The bigs are having problems a lot sometimes. Race Thompson, they'll have a game where he's had 2 games where he's had a total of 13 turnovers. So that is something they have got to get under control quickly.
I think when you look at it, a lot of this team struggles. Why collectively, but even individually. Why has Race Thompson kind of struggled here lately? The plays where he's got put in bad positions, it's because their spacing's been bad, their movement's been bad. That is kind of a team thing. Now, part of it is you've got to recognize when you get trapped here, this is your release. Guys have got to talk and let them know, where the double's coming from, where the openings are. Part of the turnover issues, I do believe, are a team issue. Part of it, I think, is just sometimes this team is subject to basically just mental lapses, making bad passes, poorly executing the passes. And sometimes it's the guy on the receiving end of it. But I think it's going to begin and end with this team with spacing, quite honestly. When the ball moves and the guys are able to create space, the offense gets a whole lot easier for them. Now, along those lines, and I think one of the reasons it was more of a struggle than what it needed to be last night, Indiana's defense, quite honestly, just wasn't that good. And they did a decent job defending in the paint, as they tend to do when they're not getting beat off the dribble. But as we saw in the first half, when you take a team that's shooting, I think 29% from 3 points to start the game, and you let them go off for 50% from behind the arc, you let an otherwise bad team keep it competitive. Now it certainly averaged out at the end. But Indiana was fortunate to have built enough of a lead that when they went down that closing stretch, and you saw the poor shot selection, you saw the turnovers, it didn't cost them. I don't think that's going to be the case against a team that's perhaps not winless in the Big Ten.
I agree, Chronic. I thought that they were a little lax defending the perimeter. I mean, Nebraska had way too many open looks in that game. And to your point also about, and to Jim's point about Indiana's guards taking the ball, I mean, I saw Iowa give Purdue a lot of problems with their pressure. I saw Rutgers at the end of that game get back in. So I think Indiana's guards not only have to take care of the ball, they're going to have to create some turnovers too in this game.
Yes.
And they can, and they're capable of doing that. And if you can do that and win the turnover battle and get some points off turnovers, get some easy baskets in this game, I think that's going to be one of the keys. I think, and that's part of Purdue's kryptonite is a little bit, is they're a little shaky taking care of the ball too. And that's one area where you can exploit them a little bit.